Hello, everyone. Welcome to the episode for Planets and Predictions here on March 4th, 2025. I don't know how it's March already. It feels like the year is just zooming by. And if you follow my content regularly, you know that I have been seeing some wild things that are happening in the energy and what's coming towards us psychically. For those of you that don't know my work, I am Dallisa Hocking. I'm a fifth generation psychic medium, and I do a lot of channeling, a lot of predictions. I have the most amazing community. Thank you to everybody who's watching live and tuning in right now. If you're wondering what the heck is happening on my screen, I have my jar here, and those folks that are watching live today and commenting, they have their little bauble going in the jar. And at the end of today's show, I will be pulling a winner that will receive a personalized 12-month tarot report from me. So it's just a fun thing I incorporated in to this Tuesday show. I say Tuesday, but our guest today is actually from Australia. And so it is Wednesday for her. So I'm going to be bringing her on the screen here in just a moment. Natasha Weber. I've been chatting with her backstage, and I have to tell you, she is delightful. We were comparing notes of our astrology charts, and we have some really interesting dynamics, the synastry between my chart and her chart and where things are really lining up. So I think that today's episode is going to be filled with a lot of insightful information about our astrology, the transits. And just like every Tuesday show, we'll be going through a couple of the current news headlines, and we're going to see what is the astrology that's aligning with these headlines. A little bit later in today's show, I am going to show you the tarot cards that I pulled. I looked at these eclipses because we have two eclipses this month, two. So I asked my tarot cards, what are we in for with this month when it comes to these eclipses? What's the energy we're going to feel? So I'm going to show you that spread here in a little bit. But first, I have to bring Natasha on the show. So let me tell you a little bit about Natasha Weber. She is accomplished. First of all, I have to show you this because she wrote this book, Your Celestial Compass, Astrology for Self-Discovery and Empowerment. I have everything linked in the description of this video, so check out her book. I also have an article that she wrote that's down in the description as well. This article is great if you are really wondering what big themes in life are going to be on the horizon, what's coming into our awareness more. So that article is also linked below. But let me tell you a little bit more about Natasha. Astrotash is the website. Astro and then TASH, astrotash.com. Maybe some of you follow her. She actually has a huge following on social media, so you may already be aware of her work. She is award-winning, has over 20 years of experience. Over 20 years, that's amazing. Resident astrologer for Channel 7's The Morning Show. She writes horoscopes for Marie Claire Australia and Mamma Mia. Even her personal story has been covered in Forbes. Forbes. Did you hear me? There's so much more I can tell you about Natasha. I've included her full bio, website, everything in the description below. So I think you are going to love her as much as I do. So let me go ahead and bring her on the screen. Natasha, we're going to do the countdown. 3, 2, 1. Hi.
Oh, hello. What a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much, Dallisa. And hello to everybody. I've been looking at the chat box and taking in your names. So it's beautiful to be here with you today.
Yay! Oh my gosh, this is going to be so much fun. We talked about how I'm Gemini rising and Sagittarius sun, and isn't yours like the opposite?
Well, I'm a Sag rising and a Gemini sun, and then the Leo moon in there as well. But yeah, our Sag things are really connecting beautifully. So I think with that Gemini Sag, we'll be doing a lot of teaching and a lot of talking, probably as well.
Yeah, I'm always up for talking, and it's that Gemini, you know, we have Uranus. It's about to go in there a little bit later this year,
Oh
and whew, I think we're going to be shaking things up with communications and everything that Uranus and Gemini brings. And
yeah,
yeah, I know one of the headlines we're going to look at in a little bit has to do with Uranus going into Gemini. So we'll get to that here shortly. But first, I have to ask you. So you've been doing this a long time, 20 years. Like, I so appreciate that. And I know that astrology, like, you can just keep learning and digging, and there's so many layers. So
yeah.
when you think about, here we are, March of 2025, what are you putting your finger on, or what are you seeing as these big astrological transits that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, well, I think definitely March is our most intense and possibly our most challenging month of one of the most intense and challenging years that we'll experience in our lifetime. I mean, the astrology of this month is transformational. I think a lot of old cycles wrapping up this month and a lot of new cycles beginning. So at the moment, of course, we've just started Mercury retrograde's pre-shadow period. And Mercury will backtrack through Aries and then Pisces. So a lot of focus on Aries and Pisces this month, the first sign of the zodiac and the last sign of the zodiac. So that's again supporting this sort of saying goodbye to the old and welcoming the new. I think, you know, there'll be different flavors or influences depending on whether Mercury's backtracking through Aries or Pisces. In Aries, we might be questioning our passions, questioning our desires, but there's certainly huge potential for temper flare-ups. So we need to be really mindful and processing our thoughts before kind of bursting out with our feelings, because Aries is very emotive and very quick to react. So slow down. And then in Pisces, I think the Mercury retrograde in Pisces, by the time it sort of it comes around, which is, I believe, Australian Eastern Standard Time, 27th of March, probably 26 in the US, until oh no, that's Venus retrograde, not Mercury. Sorry, Mercury retrograde starts on the April the 15th here in Australia. So in Pisces, this is going to be more about compassion for other people. And I think with the astrology and the events that we're going to see occur in March, that is going to be necessary. And it will be beautifully expressed. There's the potential for that with, you know, looking after our neighbors, looking after others. But then again, with that Aries feel to it, there's also a little bit of, well, I'm looking after other people, but really I should also be looking after myself. So that's Mercury's retrograde, but at the same time, we've got Venus retrograde going on again through Aries and Pisces. This is crazy. So Venus retrograde is very much about assessing our self-worth, our love, relationships with women, finances and money, and beauty, of course. So again, I think in Aries, we might be kind of questioning our not questioning our sexuality, but questioning issues around our sexual connection. And hopefully the message really is about not seeking validation or self-worth through sex, but really looking at our needs from a better place. We might be questioning our financial independence and looking to create more of that. And then I think in Pisces as well, the beauty myth, like what beauty myths are you buying into? It's that kind of illusion versus the harsh reality. And we are vulnerable to looking at our reflection in the mirror during this Venus retrograde and kind of picking it to pieces. So just being mindful of that and being self-loving and self-compassionate here, particularly when Venus is moving through Pisces. There's so much astrology in March. I feel like I'm going on and on and on.
Oh my gosh.
Another thing with the Venus retrograde that I just wanted to mention, because Venus is very much also about the divine feminine energy and the female relationships that we have, not just the sexual romantic relationships we have in our life. So important to assess our female connections and friendships. There may well be female friendships that reappear from our past, or that we review and think, well, you know, maybe that friendship has had its day. Maybe it's no longer serving us. And it is important to surround ourselves with supportive women during this time, and not women that drain us or emotional vampires, particularly during that Venus in Pisces retrograde. And then, of course, the eclipses. Dallisa, you mentioned these eclipses. We've got 2 eclipses in March. One of them being the total lunar eclipse in Virgo. So this one is the second eclipse in this series, because the first one happened in September of last year in Pisces. And so this, I think, is going to be bringing up a lot of issues around health and hygiene. And I say hygiene, when I say that, I'm thinking that, for example, in Australia, we've got a cyclone warning happening at the moment, and there are lots of weather pattern disturbances, which is not necessarily due to the eclipses. I think this is due to, this is another story, this is Neptune in the 29th degree of Pisces, but I can speak more to that a little bit later. But with this eclipse, I feel that the cyclone is going to create a situation where we will have to be mindful of our hygiene, getting clean water, how we are going to, you know, manage bacteria in our environment, mold in our environment. So I think this eclipse is going to bring up all of these themes, as well as themes that came up for you in September of last year, because of course the Pisces Virgo eclipses are going to develop and strengthen and sort of come knocking for attention in our life, you know, more and more this year and into next year. And then we've got the solar eclipse. It's a partial solar eclipse in Aries on the 29th of March here in Australia, probably the 28th for you in America. And this is the final eclipse in this Aries Libra series. So this is going to be wrapping up a story that began for all of you out there in 2023. You know, what was coming up for you since that time. And this is really, again, about wrapping up that cycle and beginning a new one. I think out in the world, we might see some dramatic leadership shifts and political conflict with this one. I also think that with all of this Aries energy, which is really coming into play right now, you know, we've got the start of a brand new astrological new year as well, with Aries season starting. So this Aries energy is so very strong. And we can speak more about that, you know, with Neptune and Saturn moving into Aries this year for a few months. But really what's coming to me is that the Aries energy is very much about survival, and we will be focused on survival this year. It's also about self-love and self-interest, you know, and where we place that on our priority list. And I think it's very important that we do that. And despite what's going on in the world, because let's face it, you know, it's pretty chaotic out there, really important to use that Pisces energy for self-compassion and self-support, and understanding that that Aries energy is pushing us and pushing our survival instincts forward. So that's in a nutshell.
Not much going on. Okay.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that you brought up the water and maybe issues with water, or I can't remember the exact words you used, but I've been predicting some kind of water issue. And I have this community called Sacred Signals, and one of my members also has been seeing visions of like contamination with the water. So there's been this like underlying story about the water.
Yeah. Well, I believe that is due to Neptune's final degree in Pisces. So Neptune is about to move into Aries, and this is a fire sign. So we've got this themes of fire and water here. But Neptune, of course, is linked to mythology. It's linked to the ocean. You know, it's the symbol of the trident. And Neptune in mythology rules cyclones and tsunamis and all these weather pattern disturbances that we've been seeing so much of. Also, the reason why I say that it's the 29th degree of Pisces, the final degree of Pisces, this is connected to a fixed star. I don't know if you work with the fixed stars, Dallisa, but they are fixed stars within a constellation. So this fixed star is located in the constellation of Pisces, and the ancients associated this star with disease, with emotional drowning. It is one of the most challenging fixed stars. So it can also, and I'm all about not just acknowledging the negative or shadow expression of an astrological transit or planet or sign, but also very much, I believe that there's also a supportive light expression to everything. And that's how I like to work. But the positive side to Skeet is heightened creativity and deep compassion and care for others. So if you do have this degree in your chart, I would just implore people not to freak out. It's okay, but use that energy in those positive ways. Make sure you're tapping into your creativity or your spiritual gifts. This can be an incredibly spiritual placement as well to receive messages from beyond the veil. So yes, back to Neptune. With Neptune in this final degree of Pisces, just before it transitions into Aries, we are seeing a lot of these Piscean, of course, Pisces is the fish, ruled by Neptune, the trident, god of the seas in mythology, in this particular fixed sign, which is associated with emotional drowning and deep tragedy, really. Neptune will then move into Aries. So again, we're bringing in the fire themes here. But then in October, Neptune does retrograde back into Pisces and will sit at this final degree until 2026, early 2026.
So a question comes up with that. So if Neptune's going into Aries and then retrograding back into Pisces, is it going to hit that same fixed star again?
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. I'm not sure exactly when. The retrograde begins in October. And yes, so Neptune will be going back into that degree because it's that 29th degree versus 0-1 degree of Aries. And that's as far into Aries as Neptune will go. And then it will go back into that final degree of Pisces for a few months. So yes,
wow.
Yeah. And this is the thing with retrogrades. And we also experience this in our birth chart. For example, if we have a Saturn return, when Saturn returns to its natal position, the position that Saturn was in at the time of your birth, we experience all the themes of Saturn return. That might be for us, it might be getting married, it might be taking out a mortgage, it might be stepping up to responsibility in some way, shape or form. It's an astrological coming of age, forcing us to grow up. But then it can ease off. And if there's a retrograde, if you just happen to have that retrograde over your natal Saturn, things can ease off, and then you can get a double hit when it goes direct and moves forward again over that point. Isn't it great?
Astrology is so fascinating. It's why I love doing these shows and talking to individuals like yourself that really study it and know it. And it is fun in a way. Maybe fun's not the right word, but it is curious that predictions that I'll get, because I'll see them, hear them, feel them. So when I'm channeling, to then hear someone like yourself, Natasha, talk about the astrology, I'm like, oh, no wonder like I'm seeing all of these things about water or war or political changes. The Mercury retrograde, I think most people have kind of heard of that, and they know what kind of delays that could create. But not everybody knows, I think, as much about the Venus retrograde. Is there truth to your exes coming back into the picture with a Venus retrograde?
Absolutely. But can I firstly say that it's equally validating for me to connect with someone with your gifts, Dallisa. And I think this is where, you know, all of these beautiful modalities like astrology and what you do, being a psychic medium, tarot, it's so wonderful that they support personal growth and discovery together. And that's why it's wonderful to come together with you. So Venus retrograde, yes, it's one of our more rare retrogrades. And a lot of people, as you mentioned, know about the Mercury retrograde. And yes, exes can come back on a Mercury retrograde. I think more so if you broke up during a retrograde, it's very likely that in the next retrograde or a subsequent retrograde that person will return to be dealt with. But Venus retrograde more so, particularly with, you know, romantic relationships, because Venus rules love. And a retrograde is simply when a planet appears to move backwards, and it doesn't actually physically move backwards in the heavens, as I'm sure you're aware. It's an optical illusion from our vantage point here on Earth, but symbolically it does, and it therefore does in the zodiac. So when any planet goes retrograde, it's a chance to refine, redo, review, reassess. You know, we use all of those words because it's going back over old ground. As that planet is symbolically going over old ground, it's reversing through our birth chart because it's reversing symbolically through the zodiac. Then we have an opportunity to go back over those previous issues and redo them, and hopefully better the next time around. This is how we can use any planetary retrograde to our advantage. But of course, when it's Venus, and Venus has to do with love, then that's especially related to romantic relationships returning. I think it's important to remember that the return during the retrograde is more often than not to do with finding closure that perhaps you didn't get when you broke up initially. And it's not necessarily a divine sign that you need to get back together. And so I'd caution anyone during this retrograde period, especially during Aries. Aries, you know, is very heart-led. It's very passionate, and it can often rush into things. If you're an Aries out there, you know what I'm talking about when I say that you're inclined to give your heart away on a silver platter. You're very, very quickly very quick to give your heart and your passion and your desires. But be mindful of that during the retrograde and slow down, make a special effort to slow down and really question, you know, why did this relationship end in the first place? And is that a place that I really want to revisit in my future?
Amy's asking if there's a shield to wear to repel your exes so they don't return.
I love that. I think the shield is called your will, your willpower. Yes.
Yeah, and boundaries.
And shield yourself in. I mean, you could do the white lighting thing, right, too. But shield yourself with self-love. You know, is this right for me? Is this person right for me moving forward?
When I hear about the Venus retrograde, I'm also thinking about the folks out there that are in relationships. And I would think of a Venus retrograde as an opportunity to perhaps reconnect, maybe you've been married for some time, and I don't know, I kind of see it as maybe sitting at the table together again and asking what the other person needs and maybe rekindling date night. So would that be like a revisiting of the relationship? Would it be a good time for people that are in a relationship to do that?
Yeah, I think absolutely. If you're going to approach it that way, that's so perfect. To really reflect, here's another word, reflect on your needs, reflect on your partner's needs. I would normally say that a quiet, deep conversation would be supported during a Venus retrograde around, relationships. But let's not forget that Mercury is also going to be in retrograde. It's already in that pre-shadow period. So one thing I would be mindful of is not dishing out any ultimatums or, drawing any lines in the sand, because Mercury rules communication. And that conversation during the retrograde is likely to, or not necessarily likely, but could potentially be misunderstood, misinterpreted. So quiet, deep, meaningful, heart-led conversations, yes. But again, with that Aries temper, be very careful. And I'd probably put it off if you're not confident that you can have the conversation in that type of tone. Yeah.
With the endings of Pisces and the beginning energies of Aries, it feels.
I'm sorry to interrupt. A lot of people, a lot of couples might actually separate during this retrograde. That's very common as well. You might have that quiet conversation and decide that it's time to actually part ways. Therein, again, we get the ending of an old cycle and the beginning of a new one in your love life. And that might be right for you. And the Venus retrograde supports that. You just want to make sure that it's happening for the right reasons and not allowing that Mercury retrograde through Aries temper and saying things off the bat without really thinking them through to have any power in that conversation.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about these retrogrades and then what you said about Neptune, 29 degrees, Pisces, and just all the planets. If anyone has looked at an astrology chart lately, the planets are all basically in Pisces and Aries. They're all like clustered in one part of the chart. So there's obviously this big activation with the endings and the beginnings. And you made a good point a minute ago about the story ending of the axis between Libra and Aries. Because I find that axis to be interesting because it's, to me, the exploration of me and others, me in relationships, me in groups, and then the Aries energy is like, but what do I want? What do I need? And so with that coming back in, I think there could be a lot of this question or consideration that people are doing around, where have I given too much of myself away perhaps, or where have I not spoken up for myself? And so the point about Mercury retrograde and people just saying what it is that they feel that they need to say, it could backfire if we say it in a way that feels a bit harsh. Because there is that big Aries energy that's front and center for all of us. So it may be a good time to hold our tongue, or if we really do need to say something, I would sit and like write it out or really feel my way through it before saying it out loud, or before sending that text or that email or having that meeting with my boss. To say, hey, I'm undervalued, maybe Venus retrograde kind of energy, perhaps. I don't know.
Absolutely.
A lot of back and forth energy, I guess, is where I'm going with all of it.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting that this solar eclipse is happening in Aries you're rounding out and finishing off this Aries Libra eclipse cycle that's been happening since 2023, where the general themes have definitely been finding the balance, which is very Libran, the balance between what we give to others and what we keep or cultivate for ourselves. And this is really, being heightened at the end of the month amongst all of the Mercury retrograde and Venus retrogrades in the Aries and Pisces signs. So it's all kind of coming to a culmination right there.
And I feel it. We have a guest here who's asking about, is this the end of the USA as we know it? And I've been talking a lot about, U.S. predictions in my Sacred Signals community because I live in the U.S., but I also am very careful to notice in the energy as well that what's happening in the U.S. is not unique to the U.S. Some of the details will be, but there are a lot of other countries and leaders of those countries that are also going to be going through different changes. And so it's not unique to one country. And maybe that's what also helps humanity to come together as well during these turbulent times, because it's not just America, or it's not just Canada. It's not just Ukraine or Russia. There's so many different people and places that are involved in these massive, massive changes. And I know your article that we linked to in the description talks a bit about these outer planets and these different themes that are going to be coming up. And so do you feel, with all this experience you have in astrology, are you pointing mainly to these outer planets? So they wouldn't be considered our personal planets like Venus, Mercury, Mars, but the outer, bigger planets. With them going in and moving into these different signs, is that what you're pointing to as the big aha or light bulb around why all of this change is happening?
Well, yes. So when I'm talking about the outer planet shifts, definitely I'm speaking to humanity, and humanity is united. When you think of man on Earth, and then you think of our place in our solar system and then in our universe, it seems crazy to separate ourselves via continents and countries. So I'm absolutely including all of humanity in my predictions with the outer planets. But indeed, the outer planets are huge. And can I just also say that, yes, this is generalized predictions for humanity, but also you can then look at how these may affect you personally by looking at where they're traveling through your birth chart. And I think that's a really important point to make, because it is a very challenging year in terms of the astrology for humanity, but that does not mean that everyone is going to experience these transits on this level, because it's going to depend on how it's affecting you in your birth chart. So where is Uranus, for example, traveling through in your birth chart? Where is your Gemini house? This is where Uranus is going to dip into this year. This is where you might experience a personal revolution. You might push back against the status quo in that area of life. If Gemini rules your 7th house, this is going to affect your relationships. If it rules your 2nd house, this is going to affect, how you make your money and your cash flow. You might throw away your 9-to-5 job and decide to fully invest in your side hustle because you want to revolutionize how you create wealth. So it's important to realize that not everyone is going to be affected in such a challenging way that, I might describe in the overall predictions. But we all have, it's layered, right? And astrology is so layered. So how you experience it personally may not be exactly the same as how humanity in general, the themes that are running through, yes, our world. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. And it reminds me of when we went through the pandemic in 2020. So many astrologers and psychics were predicting massive change in 2020. And although the predictions for that year felt very intense, and of course they manifested that way as well, I know of a lot of people that had a really incredible year
Right.
through 2020, 2021, dealing with the aspects of transits. I think it was Jupiter, Saturn that set all that stuff off. But
And
yeah,
Pluto, Saturn, but Jupiter was definitely in the mix as well. And of course, we didn't see this particular connection since I think it was 1918, and that's when we had the Spanish flu. So Pluto does rule these types of viruses and issues. So, and the immune system.
Oh, yeah. I think we should look at these headlines because I know we have one of the headlines is about just that. But let's pull this up and see what we've got here. And I'd love your take on where the astrology is aligning with these. So the first one is the announcement in the United States that Trump halts U.S. military aid to Ukraine. There's a big fight on Friday between Trump and Zelensky that is now ricocheted into this week and conversations that different world leaders are having. So what do you see about this in the astrology?
Yes, I see Neptune and Saturn moving into Aries. And I think that, I pull these two together because I think we need to look at this Neptune-Saturn story in Aries together. They do work in synergy. We've got Saturn really dismantling previous structures and patterns. Neptune is dissolving our old ways and rebuilding something new. In order to do that, though, I do think that this Aries energy, Aries is the sign of the warrior. Conflict is ruled by Mars, the god of war. So yes, certainly I'm not the first astrologer to say that I do see political unrest, conflict, and war. And these themes have actually started years ago when the nodes moved into Aries and Libra. And it was interesting that back then I was predicting themes of, this was before the Ukraine was invaded. So I was predicting the themes of war and focus on military and our defenses. And because I'm a media astrologer, I presented this in my article to predict the year ahead. And most of the media outlets did not want to print that part. One did, so it is there, it's live. I believe that was news.com.au, where I did mention that to do with the nodes moving into Aries and Pisces. But of course, now we have the nodes have shifted. So we're again getting that new cycle, but the Aries themes are coming in even stronger now with Neptune making an enormous shift. I mean, Neptune hasn't been in Aries since 1861. Back then, we had the US, or you had the US Civil War. So therein lies the themes of war and conflict resurfacing at this time. And I think that Neptune is also on the lighter side of things. It's about building that new vision, building that new dream, but we almost have to burn down the old ways before we can step into that new vision. And this is unfortunately a part of this. I think this will escalate as the Aries themes do this year.
Yeah, I've been echoing that in my predictions, and I've been calling it the Tower card in tarot.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. It's the burning of the tower, but from that you get the phoenix rising from the ashes after it. So, whew. Okay, let's look at the next one.
Okay.
Such light and cheery headlines. Okay, so the next one is about Social Security. So I made this prediction a few weeks ago in Sacred Signals, and I said, okay, it feels to me like Social Security is going to change. And of course, a lot of people that are retired rely on Social Security money from the United States to fund their retirement so they can pay their bills. Well, now, as predicted, they're saying that they may have an interruption to benefit. So what would you tie back? Is this a Venus retrograde? Is this something different? Like, where are you seeing it show up?
I think two transits possibly tie into this one. I mean, it's happening. It's being presented now, obviously, the headline. So this is very much a Venus retrograde issue because Venus also rules money. Venus is not just about love or divine feminine energy. It's very much about money and what we value. So when Venus goes retrograde, it does not support these areas of our life. So this is a very typical Venus retrograde thing, but I would not be surprised, and I hope for the pensioners out there, I do hope that this is reviewed and perhaps at a later date reinstated. I also think there's smacks of a little bit of Uranus moving into Gemini, which it will do in July. So we might see this conversation kind of returning at that time. But I do see that massive disruptions around money, particularly digital currency, and a banking crisis related to that, related to crypto. I understand, I'm not sure if this is correct, but I did hear that Trump was considering bringing out his own cryptocurrency. Trump is, of course, a Gemini, so we might hear more about that when Uranus enters Gemini in July. But again, it's just dipping its toes in this year, and it will retrograde out towards the end of this year, but then it will go back in 2026. So yes, this is a very terrible headline, but let's hope that it is reviewed in typical retrograde style.
Yeah, I've been seeing the same thing. I look at the energy of cryptocurrencies, and I also look at banking and digital currencies. Because a lot of my community wants to know about money, of course. I mean, you need it in the 3D Earth world to live, right?
Yeah.
And so I get asked a lot, and it is very fickle. The energy is a bit erratic. And so I think for me that Uranus going into Gemini is really going to be interesting about money. And Uranus is a slow moving planet. And so wherever that is, in your chart, it's more of a generational planet, but Uranus, wherever that's showing up, that is, I think of Uranus as sudden, unexpected changes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a Gemini, so I'm like, oh, okay. I think we need to be mindful of our health. I think when Uranus is present, particularly on your sun sign, it's going to lend itself to erratic changes in your energy and your vitality. So you need to be mindful of pacing yourself, but also it can be brilliant. Uranus is the genius planet. So we can get some genius downloads. If you've got a Mercury in Gemini and Uranus is hitting that off, wow, like get a paper and pen and write all of those downloads that are going to be hitting you. That's going to be fantastic. But it's very much about a personal revolution as well in the chart. But yes, money, digital currency, this is a hugely changing landscape. We're going to get a preview of this from July for a few months, and then it will pick up speed in 2026. Yeah, I think also Uranus in Gemini is going to affect travel. We'll see a lot of travel disruptions, more so though to do with our local travel and public transportation infrastructure, because Gemini is more local, whereas Sagittarius is more about overseas travel. So yeah, we'll see some disruptions. We'll see some disruptions there. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I think it's exciting in a way to be alive right now. I mean, there's going to be a lot that happens. And unfortunately, there will be people that this is not a time of their life that they're enjoying, you could say. But hopefully there's silver linings in every day in everyone's life. And we have to, rely on each other and, bring our communities together to help each other out. And I think that's one of the aspects I'm looking forward to, is looking at how we come together to overcome challenges. And I think we will. And I think the human spirit is resilient. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that all happens. Okay, next headline. Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, yes. I was going to say that what you're speaking to is absolutely Pluto in Aquarius. Aquarius is the sign of friendship. It's the sign of community. So there is absolutely a silver lining, and there is much to look forward to next year. But Pluto in Aquarius will be that underlying force that pulls communities together. And through these challenges, we will survive, a la Aries, and we will grow into a better version of ourselves. And there's that Neptunian vision, that idealistic dream for the future. But there's also that sort of burning down of what is old and what is outdated. And humanity might struggle through that, but we will reach the end of this challenge. Yeah.
Phew, and we'll learn a lot during it. I am certain of that. Our next headline is about pig brains and oxygen chambers and how the super rich are biohacking their way to immortality. So I know you've mentioned health a few times today, Natasha. So where do you feel like the biohacking or immortality comes in?
Oh, this speaks to a lot of the astrology that is going on, that is happening. So Pluto in Aquarius, again, Aquarius and the Gemini energy with Uranus in Gemini is quite revolutionary. Aquarius is the sign of the future. So this is where I, visualize what our lives might look like in the next 20 years. Aquarius, Pluto will stay in Aquarius until 2044. So in that time, I think we're going to be morphing into somewhat of a sci-fi movie. Our lives might look a little bit like that. And I think we're just dipping our toes into these revolutionary new scientific breakthroughs in technology, and this has got to do with our human body as well, because our human body will have to adapt to this new life that we're living with all of the 5G that's coming into play. We're on our phones constantly. I mean, you just have to watch a sci-fi movie to know what it's going to look like. And I think we might eventually see, bionic body parts, if we're not seeing this already, but this is going to be escalating next level. It's a Pluto in Aquarius thing. And I worry about this. I'm just someone who is concerned about our connection to nature and our organic state of being, because we are still human, and I think we need to be very mindful of how we're stepping into this new future, and with all of its technological advancements, and finding that balance as we move into the age of Aquarius and away from the age of Pisces. This has always been a concern of mine, moving away from that humanity and compassion of Pisces and into the more technologically advanced age of Aquarius. Let's honor our humanness while finding the balance between the brilliance of the scientific and medical discoveries that we will come up with in the age of Aquarius. Yeah.
Reminds me. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yes. And I was just going to say, we've got this Brian Johnson. He's an American guy, right? Super popular. I actually follow him as well. And what he's doing is fascinating. So we can lean into this biohacking to a degree to improve our health and possibly our longevity. But just, keeping that mindfulness, staying connected to what is organic and what is actually good for our body. But it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the longevity medicine arena with this. Yeah.
I think we'll end up curing a lot of what we have as diseases. I've been seeing that in the energy and with AI helping with those cures, but how those cures come to market feel like a slightly different story with how that happens, what's allowed to happen, but that could be part of that breakdown that then leads to the breakthroughs.
Yes.
I was going to share, I have a 90-minute psychic stage show, and at the end of every show, I channel a message and I just open it up to spirit. I'm like, what do you want everybody here to know?
Yeah.
And I don't remember what I channel afterwards, ever.
Wow.
So I was at dinner with a couple of my girlfriends after the show, and they were reminding me of what the heck spirit had brought through. And basically, the summary is that with the rise of technology, we will find ourselves at a similar fork in the road or tipping point that other ancient advanced civilizations had been in, but that they weren't able to successfully navigate it. So will we be able to navigate it this time? And I have chills as I say that. So I know that there is something about the rise of technology, and are we going to lose our humanity, which is what you were just talking about. But that was channeled through a few weeks ago.
Oh, that's interesting that should come up when I was talking about this. Yes. Well, I mean, we shall see. I have great hope for humanity. I believe we can if we want to. It's a choice. And I mean, I know a lot of people will disagree with that, but I do believe in the power of choice. But this will come down to the collective power of choice. And so let's hope that the majority of us are aware enough to stay connected to our humanity while progressing into this future very, very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's look at our next one. This one is about the measles. So I've heard different perspectives on the measles, at least here in the United States. One being that the spread of measles is pretty typical, but then I also was sent a headline from one of my Sacred Signal community members saying that there was potentially an Ebola case in New York City. And then we have bird flu, right? So there's just a bunch of things happening with this health energy. So do you think, it sounds like based on what you said earlier, that this is going to be a key theme, and we may be at the precipice of having another health emergency or another outbreak. So this feels like it's going to be around for a while.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I mean, there are, again, are layers. And whenever there are layers in the astrology, that's when we really sit up and take notice, right? So again, we've got the lunar eclipse occurring in the middle of this month. It's in Virgo. Virgo is the sign of health, and eclipses often bring emergencies and crisis and sudden unexpected changes. So that could be related to the lunar eclipse in Virgo. But I think even bigger than that is the Neptune-Saturn connection in Aries. This is extremely rare. Neptune and Saturn will get very, very close. I think around about August, July, August. The exact conjunction doesn't occur until early next year. So I would really be keeping my eye on January, February of 2026 for sort of any major health issues. But I think we'll be getting some idea of what we can expect around that July, August period. Neptune and Saturn can be, in their shadow expression, a really undermining energy. It's a weakened, depleted energy. It is the typical health conjunction or health alignment in astrology. So I think this is definitely something to be mindful of. This is not the time to be taking risks with our health, which we might be tempted to do considering it's in Aries, the sign of the risk taker. But also, we might well see on the other side of this, we might see some incredible medical breakthroughs occurring around this time as well. So this might be in response to what we're dealing with the health crisis we're dealing with, or it could be separate. And I think there'll be an attention on our medical system, on fortifying a medical system, our doctors here in Australia. There's a bit of a GP shortage, and certainly a long waiting list for people to get medical attention and to be admitted into hospital for much needed surgeries. This could bring attention and support to those areas. And also, Aries rules blood in astrology. So we might see, and it's a very pioneering sign. So with these two planets located here, we might see some real pioneering breakthroughs in blood work or pathology.
Wow. Wow. That's what I mean by astrology. There's so many layers and things that you can look at, and oh my gosh, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh, I talk about astrology all the time to people about how they need to know their chart. You need to look up the transits and see how it's affecting them. And oh, we have one more headline.
Okay.
So this one was interesting. Newsweek did an article where they had a map of the United States, but I also think this is global, where they were showing where Christianity was increasing or decreasing. And so I've been feeling a lot of energy around organized religion and what could be happening with organized religion, what could be happening with light workers or astrologers and psychics. And it feels like there's this like tension almost between the two groups. And so it makes me wonder if there is something astrologically that is aligned with the energy of Christianity, religion, spirituality. So do you see this showing up anywhere?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, in two places. Initially, my mind goes straight to the nodes, with the North Node having started its cycle through Pisces and the South Node directly opposite in Virgo. So this is very much about spirituality and possibly organized religion versus logic, versus practicalities, versus reality. So we will definitely be questioning organized religion. We'll be questioning our own spirituality and what feels right for us, because the nodes are very much about our soul path. They're such a personal spiritual placement already. So to have these nodes in these signs really heightening the sort of destined path that we will be choosing to take. So it is faith versus logic. And there is a call, I think, to surrender to the faith. And I think that, astrology, it's not just separate. It's not just Pluto and Aquarius dealing with one thing, and then we've got, the nodes dealing with another. Everything is working in synergy in the sky, and therefore in our charts and our experience here. So with everything that's going on, what we were talking about before with the political conflict to do with all of that Aries energy, this is calling us to lean into the North Node in Pisces, which in astrology, we need to lean more into our North Node. It's what we need to develop here in this lifetime. And that is to embrace our faith, to surrender, and to have compassion. This is going to bring in the compassion for others, also the compassion for self. And it's not so much a matter of actively rejecting what's going on in the South Node in Virgo, because this is more about practicalities and logic and reality. It's I can't see it or touch it, so it must not be real. But it's about sort of coming to an understanding and a balance between both. Like, okay, I can still be living in the real world and yet surrender to my faith and have that beautiful balance there. But in terms of what's happening here with this headline, yes, I mean, this is reflective of people questioning their spirituality, questioning organized religion. And then with Neptune entering Pisces, let's not forget that Neptune is the planet of spirituality. Neptune is the ruler of Pisces, and it's moving into Aries. So we will then, Aries being the first sign, that new cycle. So again, here's the ending of an old cycle, because Neptune has been in Pisces since 2011. So it's a 14-year cycle that's coming to an end. So we are doing a lot of questioning as we're transitioning into a brand new Neptunian cycle, with Neptune being the planet of religion and spirituality and faith and higher self. So it's all working together.
And it feels so divinely timed because of all of the other things we've been talking about today, and all of these big changes and what we should be aware of and be on the lookout for. Then we have that North Node Pisces, which I think for me is this energy of that resilience, like you will get through this, and leaning into your faith more. And so when things are falling apart, I think a lot more people will be leaning into their beliefs and, is there God? And if there is God, why is God doing this to us? Or our relationship to prayer and all of that. Yeah.
Yes. And it's a beautiful time to strengthen your faith through finding new spiritual practices. It doesn't necessarily mean, old cycles are no longer, or vice versa. It can be about finding new pathways within your own spiritual beliefs, finding new practices that work for you. Maybe astrology, is something you want to explore more. Maybe it's meditation, things that are going to, or modalities that are going to help you keep your faith, strengthen your faith, and also help you look after yourself, that self-care and compassion coming through with that Pisces energy as well.
I feel like everyone's going to need to listen back to this a time or two, because there's so much that we've talked about today in the astrology. And I would encourage everybody watching this, if you have friends or family or coworkers that are open to this kind of discussion, please share it with them. It's not to cause them any fear, but just to help them realize that there is this big divine plan in place, and that we're not alone. Because I think of often the people walking around the planet that are not into astrology, or they don't have a psychic or a tarot card reader that they talk to, and they may just be feeling a lot of fear and perhaps a lot of oblivion as to what's going on energetically. And it can feel very isolating if you think that you're walking through this world alone.
Yes, and we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So, the people who are not necessarily aware of astrology, or they don't have a spiritual practice that they incorporate into their daily lives, but they're still picking up on that energy, very subtly. When we just turn on our news programs and the headlines, it's very scary out there at the moment. So in that way, I feel that conversations like this can be really helpful, because we've got to be honest, firstly, with what's going on, especially with all this Sagittarian energy going on between you and I, Dallisa, with my rising and your sun sign, right? We're going to dish out the honesty, but do so in a way that's empowering. Because when we have the knowledge, again, oh my God, another Sagittarian theme. Sorry, can't help myself. But when we have the knowledge, knowledge is power, right? And it's also understanding the cycles of the planets, that this is not an indefinite energetic shift, that there is a beginning and an end to it. And that, and maybe we can even make some of these transits work well for us in our own personal charts, and just understanding how to do that. So I agree with you that these conversations are so necessary and can be so supportive.
Absolutely. Before we say goodbye to you today, Natasha, is there anything else you want to leave the audience with, of any words or thoughts?
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I know. It's such a loaded question.
Yes, it is. However, I would love to. I think just to understand that 2025 is going to be a challenging year, and to be prepared for that. Someone once told me that low expectations are the key to happiness, and it's a terrible thing to say, but I think just understanding that the expectations for this year are about transition. It's a very transitionary year, and change always comes with challenge most often. So, but in knowing that, to also keep high and bright about what the future holds, because I truly believe that, especially as we get into the second half of 2026, we are going to see a lot more. Oh my gosh, my light's just going flickering off and on.
I saw that.
Oh yes, hello. We are going to see, I believe, a beautiful world emerging if humanity chooses, and all of that light expression. Oh my gosh, that light expression of Pluto in Aquarius, which is happening until 2044. Okay, so I'm taking that as validation. I mean, I'm not even clairvoyant. That is coming, and that is something to look forward to. So maybe think, survive in 2025 and look forward to blossoming in the second half, particularly of 2026.
That's hysterical that your light keeps going off and on, because I too believe that is validation that what you are saying, everyone needs to make sure they hear.
Oh, yeah.
That's normal for my world, but
I know. Wow. Okay. My mum's clairvoyant and my Oma is clairvoyant. She does the automatic writing. Yeah. So I actually would sit around the dining table as a young child during her seances and watch her do the automatic writing and communicate for friends to get in touch with their relatives that had departed from beyond the veil. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is so fun. We had someone, Robin, write in and say that we make a good team. So we'll have to make sure we have you back on the show. I knew that my audience would absolutely love you and your insight. And we're both wearing our glasses. We've got our Sagittarius Gemini energy just front and center in this video. Oh my gosh, you're amazing. Astrotash.com is your website. I've said check out the description below to get the link to the article that I posted earlier that Natasha wrote. Check out her website. She's doing a bunch of cool stuff with the media and writing and horoscopes and all kinds of fun stuff. So please check her out on her website and on socials. And Natasha Weber, thank you so much.
Thank you so, so much for having me, Dallisa, and much love to your entire community. Thank you so much for being present. I truly appreciate your energy.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks. Oh my gosh, I love her. I've been keeping an eye on the comments, and I know a lot of you really resonated with what Natasha brought to today's show. Oh my goodness gracious. Don't you love, I know we've had, I think, 4 different astrologers, so each week since the show started, and each astrologer is a little bit different, and they each bring their, their unique perspective to it. And I feel like each week we're building on the story of what is happening, what's unfolding. So I'll invite her back to the show. I hope that we can get her back on. I think it'll be delightful. So, okay, so a couple more things we need to go over before we close out today's show and pick our winner for the personalized tarot report. So I want to show you the tarot cards that I pulled. So I sat down with my cards and said, okay, what are we dealing with these 2 eclipses? And yeah, let me just show it to you. So let me explain what these cards are as well. On the top card, that's the world. That is our past energy. So I'm just looking at this as like a collective, as a world energy. The middle row there is the present energy and what we're sitting in today as we're getting ready closer and closer each day to these eclipses. So we have the Knight of Wands, we have the Seven of Wands, we have the Empress. My eyes, I feel like I need like better glasses. My photo is so small. Then in the last column there, we have what the future energy is. And this is really the energy that I'm focused on for these eclipses. What is coming, right? So we have the Sun, we have the Ace of Swords, and we have the Eight of Wands. I pulled extra cards to get more information. That what came up there were the Eight of Swords, the Chariot, and the Nine of Swords. So it doesn't matter if you've ever seen a tarot deck in your whole life. I'm going to tell you what this means. So the energy right now in the very center, you see the man on the tarot card in the very center of that has the wand, and he's holding it like this. And it feels very defensive. That feels very appropriate to where we're at right now in the world, and feeling like, do I have to fight someone off? Do I have to fight another country off? Do I have to fight for my rights? So that is the center that I'm looking at as the key energy for what's happening right now. The Empress to me is a card next to that can also indicate with that Knight of Wands in that same column about perhaps changes with money. And we talked about changes with money today. And we even showed the headline about Social Security and perhaps some changes there. What are we going to see with cryptocurrency, digital currency? So that's coming up as like all these questions in the middle. So that future energy, if we drop down there and ask, what are these eclipses going to bring? The Sun, for me, is a card about illumination, that we will see a lot more that's happening. And as I've talked to different astrologers and tuned into the energy, that fits, because I think by the time we get to, let's call it early April, we get through the month of March, there's going to be so much more information that we don't have right now that we are going to have in the next 30 days. This is going to be a month that we will never forget, and a year we will never forget. So the Sun with that illumination is interesting. With the Ace of Swords to me is about new thoughts, a very simplistic way of interpreting that card. So Eight of Wands is fast moving. That feels like the tempo of March, where we're going to think we've seen the biggest headline of the day, and then the news does breaking news, and we have another big headline. That's that feeling, and getting more information. So when I pulled those bonus cards of the Eight of Swords, the Chariot, and the Nine of Swords, the Eight of Swords for me is a card where we feel restricted, we feel held back, we feel like we can't get to where we want to go. But right next to the Chariot, which is the major arcana card, and so it puts into this question of, what am I allowed to do? What do I feel, or where do I feel like I need to be in order to feel like I can be free? So there's going to be questions in the world this month with these eclipse energies around restrictions and where we really feel like we can walk through the world as ourselves and feel safe and secure. Because that last card there, the Nine of Swords, I know it's kind of hard to see in the picture, but the Nine of Swords is a card where there's someone sitting up in bed. All the swords are lining their wall, and they're in despair. They have their head in their hands, and they feel like everything is falling apart. So with the Eight of Wands and that Chariot there, it feels like that pace is going to be very, very rapid this month. So as Natasha and I were talking about, and she was mentioning the nature connection and humanity not losing that connection to nature and grounding, that is going to be absolutely critical, especially this month, because it could very much feel like more and more is happening that is lending to restrictions or setbacks. But with that Sun and that Ace of Swords, we are going to learn a lot this month that we didn't know before. So buckle your seatbelt. It's going to get wild. There's a couple other things I just want to mention quickly as we begin to close out the show, and I pick my winner for the tarot card report, which we'll do here in a moment. I am actually teaching a workshop called the Eclipse Code. I have seen a bunch of you asking, like, oh, I'm a Scorpio, or I have this, or I have that, and how do I figure this out? So since you're on this show today, you get the alert because the email goes out tomorrow. So the community class is something I do every month, and it's a class that I tune into Spirit and say, Spirit, what do you want me to teach people? So this month I am teaching you about the eclipse in late March, and I'll show you how to find it in your birth chart. And I think probably my most favorite part of this class is you literally get to name your own price. And I mean that. The class is valued at $35, but I have everybody, paying all kinds of different amounts. So you just name your own price. You get the access to the live Zoom. You also get the full replay afterwards. And if you are one of the first 50 people to register for the class, you get access to a guide that I put together for you. It's not about 9 pages. That goes over the March 13th, 14th eclipse that hits, because it hits, if you're in the United States, it hits basically like around the midnight hour. So you get a 9-page guide, and it tells you how to find that eclipse in your chart. So I am so excited because I love astrology so much. So I'm excited to teach this. It's on my website. So if you go to spiritandspark.com, spiritandspark.com, click on classes. It is under the classes tab. That's where you're going to find it. So since you're here and you tuned in, you get to learn about that first. Okay, let's see what else I have on here. So the other night, so my Sacred Signal members don't know this yet. The other night, I was going to sleep, and wouldn't you know it, right as I have my eyes closed, I start channeling the messages that Spirit had for me. So I ended up coming up with an 11-minute channeling about what I was seeing for these future visions. So I am going to share what came out of that recording this Thursday in the Sacred Signals Zoom broadcast. So if you're a Sacred Signals member, you are going to find out what Spirit had to say in my 11-minute recording. So if you go to spiritandspark.com, you can click on Sacred Signals for that if you're not a member yet. I'd love to have you there. My members are so amazing, and my community is the best. So thank you to everybody. What else do I have on here? Oh yeah, if you are one of the 3 people in the whole world that have not taken this quiz, while you're over there checking out the Eclipse Code workshop or checking out Sacred Signals, take the quiz, find out what your psychic ability is. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you to everybody who's taken it. So take the power quiz. Reminder in the comments, I have Natasha's book. So if you really loved her like I did, that's her book. So check that out. And then the link to her article is down there at the bottom as well. Yay! It's going to be awesome. Oh, as I'm clicking all the buttons, man, I can tell Mercury is in retrograde, or it's in the shadow, because I've been hitting all the buttons today and all the wrong buttons. Do me a favor before we close out. If you have not given the video a thumbs up, please do that. If you have not hit the subscribe button, please do that. It lets YouTube know that you like this content, and then it shows it to more people. So it's an easy way to help me get this video in front of more people. So thank you for that thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. And if you're watching the replay, drop me a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. Okay, so the way this jar works, I'm going to hit the button. The name is going to pop up exactly as it appears as your name on YouTube, okay? You have until midnight tonight to email me. I'm going to put my email address in here. You have until midnight to email me and claim your personalized tarot report if you are today's lucky winner. But thank you for being here. Thank you to Natasha Weber. Okay, here we go. Drum roll. Okay. Sarah Sabalt. I know I butchered your last name. Sabalt? Sarah? I saw your name pop up on the comments, so I know you're here. So email me, claim your prize. And yeah, so next Tuesday, we'll be back with an all new episode of Planets and Predictions. And if you are a Sacred Signals member, I will see you on Thursday to let you know what I channeled in that 11-minute audio recording. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. I will see you next